Bacteria have an array of effects on the human body and human and ecological impacts as well. One mutualistic effect that's much more important than it gets credit for is our gut microbiome. So, if you know anything about human anatomy, your food starts in your mouth, it goes through your esophagus to your stomach, and then it goes through your intestines. And in your large intestine, there is a huge amount, anywhere from 500 to 1,000 different species of bacteria living in your colon. And it's estimated that there's actually more bacterial cells in your colon than you have human cells in the rest of your body. So you're basically a giant bacteria. Enough that some people consider the gut microbiome to be an entirely separate organ inside of our intestines. And the gut microbiome inside of our body is affected by so many things, by the diet that you eat. So if you think about it like this, when you eat things like carbohydrates and fibers and fruits and vegetables and things that are good for you, they feed certain types of bacteria that eat those things. And then when you eat other things that are maybe less healthy, like red meats, very processed foods, those actually feed different types of bacteria. So the bacteria that you have living in your body will depend on what you put in your body, how much stress you put on your body. The birthing process is important in establishing the gut microbiome. So a vaginal birth, a baby will come through the mother's vagina. The bacteria that are present get into the baby's body, and that sets up into the mouth, and that sets up the beginnings of their gut microbiome. This doesn't happen in a C-section because a C-section happens in a very sterile environment. So what started happening is babies that are born in C-sections are actually given a bacterial lavage or wash to help them set up a gut microbiome. And your microbiome in your gut is really important for a lot of processes in your body. These bacteria can synthesize carbohydrate to help feed other good bacteria. They synthesize vitamins, other microbacterial signals. So this can help reduce competition of bacteria inside the intestines for the good bacteria, and then help outcompete bacteria that are harmful to you. And they help with your metabolism, help digest foods that maybe you can't digest. There's an interesting link that has been discovered in the last 10 years to obesity. So studies have shown that people who are obese versus people who are not obese have widely different gut microbiomes. And so there's this idea that what gut microbiome you have actually affects your metabolism, how much you want to eat, and how much fat you retain on the body. Bacteria can obviously be pathogenic or harmful and disease-causing to humans also. About 2 million people die of tuberculosis, so that's a bacterial in the lungs, every year. Another 2 million people die of dysentery from other bacterial infections that cause diarrhea. Lyme disease is from ticks and field mice, kills anywhere from 15,000 to 20,000 people in the United States in every year. Bacteria are often toxic because they release toxins. So an exotoxin is something that a bacteria will release from its body, and then the toxins cause the harm in the cells. And then an endotoxin is released only when that bacterial cells die or their cell wall breaks. But either way, they can cause harmful results in the human body. Horizontal gene transfer, so those transformation or transduction can spread genes that are associated with virulence. So virulence is how bad is a disease, or how pathogenic is a bacterium. E. coli is a common gut bacterium, so most E. coli are not pathogenic. However, if E. coli picks up a pathogenic strain, it can actually receive those genes from other cells and then become virulent and a disease causing, and it causes stomach problems and intestinal issues. We've seen other pathogenic bacteria that create endospores like anthrax. So in the mail in 2001, there was a huge anthrax scare as a few political officials received anthrax endospores in the mail. And then when those anthrax endospores made it into their body, they re-emerged as fully living anthrax cells and then started to cause the disease anthrax in the body. Some pathogenic bacteria have become resistant to antibiotics. So MRSA is methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. So this is a staph infection, but it's become resistant to many different commonly used antibiotics. We're seeing antibiotic resistance become something that is more common. There's theories that we're heading towards a post-antibiotic world because of our overuse of antibiotics to treat bacteria. And doctors used to prescribe antibiotics for everything, bacterial, viral. They just gave out antibiotics all the time. There's been a move away from that. Now, if you go to the doctor with a cold, they're going to determine it's a virus, and they're definitely not going to give you antibiotics for it. And antibiotics do not work on viruses. They only work on bacteria. So usually a doctor will have to say, okay, yeah, you do have a bacterial infection before they'll prescribe antibiotics. And some doctors are even moving away from prescribing antibiotics right away. So I saw this a lot with my son when he would get ear infections early on. And the doctors would say, wait 24 to 48 hours before you start giving the antibiotics, see if this will clear up on its own. And even though this helps, most antibiotics aren't given by doctors. About 80% of the antibiotics, 80% of antibiotics used in the United States are used in factory farming. And this is because factory farms are really squalid, disgusting environments where animals, pigs, cows, sheep, chickens are kept really, really close to each other in really dense environments. So they're literally walking around in their own excrement. And that is a bacteria breeding ground. And if we didn't pump tons of antibiotics into those animals' food, they would get sick and die. So the farmers, instead of spreading the animals out so they have a more healthy environment, or accepting the loss of disease, they give them tons and tons of antibiotics. And so over time, they develop resistance. The bacteria can develop resistance, and then we have to have stronger and stronger antibiotics to fight that off. The problem with that is that we don't develop antibiotics very quickly. The bacteria are able to mutate and create new strains a lot more efficiently than we can produce new, stronger antibiotics. Bacteria can also be helpful to humans for different reasons. So bacteria are used in the fermentation processes of milks and cheese, things like sauerkraut, cabbage, as well as the fermentation of alcohol. Bacteria can be used to make natural plastics. We use bacterial technology to create copies of DNA, so recombinant DNA, as well gene cloning, as well as the CRISPR-Cas9 system, which we now use for gene editing, came from bacteria. We've even seen bacteria used in things called like bioremediation, which can help remove pollutants from the environment. So bacteria that can metabolize these large oils are able to be thrown in with petroleum oil spills, and those help degrade those oils particles down so that it can be more easily removed from the environment.